Menopause TV, London.
Okay friends, it is time to talk hot flashes with Dr. Sarah Tremaine Douglas. And although we may not eradicate these, and with so many suffering in completely different ways, what we do hope to offer with this episode's discussion is some information and possibly some hope to you if you do struggle through these. The topic of hot flashes is broad, and in our short time together, we're just going to really scratch the surface as far as options are concerned. And there are certainly other therapies such as hormone replacement therapy or bioidentical hormone therapy that we don't discuss, and that they do deserve consideration as well, that perhaps women should think about considering. But however, these are worth thinking about, talking with your healthcare provider about. That's not for this episode to go into, because different things will work for different people. Now, no two women go through menopause in the same way. They don't have the same experience. The timing, intensity, degree of impact may not affect two women at all in the same way. So we really need to take an individualized approach when it comes to helping women cope with the symptoms during menopause transition and to improve their quality of life during this pivotal time. Dr. Sarah is a naturopathic doctor. She's located at Compass Rose Wellness Center. I just love saying that name, in Kamoka, and also works with patients from across Ontario virtually, and she's always accepting new patients as well. She is passionate about helping educate and empower women with good information so that they can understand their health, their options, and choose at the end of the day what is best for them, because that's so important. She brings an integrative approach to her healthcare, and her focus is on improving health through evidence-based natural therapies. And she's passionate about client-centered care. She works alongside clients to help them adopt effective and sustainable strategies to improve these health concerns. Her clinical practice focuses on women's health, fertility, and pediatric care, and she's worked closely with both the London and Stratford midwives to provide collaborative and integrative care out there. Inspired by her own health challenges and experiences with healthcare as a child, she decided to pursue a career in integrative medicine. She received a postgraduate degree in naturopathic medicine from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine, as well as a Master's of Science degree in biology from the University of Windsor. And she's also provided medical care to underserved populations in Cap Haitian, Haiti. I hope I'm saying that right, in LA as well, and Nicaragua. I love that about her. So our conversation is a hot topic and full of wonderful information from her too. However, what we discuss in this episode, please, is not intended as medical advice for you. This is just to bring up information to you, get you thinking. If you have a question about any of it that we discussed today, please make sure you bring it to the attention of your healthcare provider. So let's see if we can begin to cool off a little bit together here. So welcome, and I am very excited about this particular episode. We, in fact, filmed it last summer, but where we were, the particular location, there was a roof being put on a building nearby, and it was very loud. So it was a shame in a sense, because Dr. Sarah Tremaine Douglas is here to talk about hot flashes, and it was a topic that a lot of people were very interested in. So I'm really, really excited to be able to do that today. And Sarah, thank you so much for coming out and giving us your time again, because this is a very important topic to an awful lot of women. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, how you help women through this time of life?
Sure. Thanks, Carolyn. I'm really happy to be here again and to have this opportunity. It's too good of a topic to miss out on for women. So as you said, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I work with women from all over the province of Ontario. My clinical focus is in women's health and fertility. I'm really passionate about educating and empowering women so that they can understand what's going on with their bodies. So also they can understand or have a better idea of the treatment options available to them, whether it's conventional or integrative care, because the goal is for the women to have enough information and understanding that they can choose the best health plan for themselves going forward, right? They're really in the driver's seat.
And information is power at the end of the day.
It is. Information is power, for sure.
So can you give us a brief overview about menopause and the menopause transition?
Yes,
Would
sure.
you mind?
Sure. So menopause is, you know what? Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
This is a really exciting topic, and I think it's particularly interesting. Menopause and the menopause transition are something that the health research has really left out. It's been largely ignored, and in education, we're not well educated about what happens with our bodies and what to expect during this time frame. A lot of us kind of inform our opinion about what's going to happen in our menopause experience by listening to our mothers or older family members. And there isn't actually that good data showing that our experience will look like theirs, except for in some situations.
Wow.
Yeah. The other thing is that we don't talk about it a lot, right? The pandemic has certainly made that worse because people seem to be more isolated, or at least we were for a period of time. So I'm happy that you have a show like this where people can tune in and get the education that they need.
Thank you so much for that. And that was a big reason for it, is to get women talking. And once they hear that we have a show, there's just no stopping people. The conversations really do happen.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
So yeah. So what does the transition look like for most women? And at the end of the day, is it the same? I mean, I know the answer to this as I'm asking you, but is it the same for every woman? It's good that people hear this from you.
Sure. Can we go back a bit?
Sure.
I just wanted to say this topic is so important to talk about and for women to be educated on, because menopause tends to happen at a time of women's life when they're at their prime, right?
You're right.
Typically, we're at the top of our career, our relationships, our family, right? It can also be a really stressful time of life. So as a society, we can't afford to have women taken out at this time of life by menopausal symptoms. We just can't. We have to do a better job of treating them so that women have a good quality of life. And on an individual level, right, we just, the impact on quality of life can be huge, especially for someone that has really profound symptoms over 10 or more years. It's a huge chunk of time to not feel like yourself. And the data also shows that when women in menopause don't feel well, they move less, right? So they move their body less, not necessarily because of hormonal changes, but because of how they feel.
Yes.
Because of those hormonal changes, which increases their risk for all sorts of metabolic conditions down the road, right? So it's really important to talk about. The other thing is that during this window of time in a woman's life, we have this unique opportunity to intervene, where we can not only treat her symptoms, but we can also change the trajectory of her menopause experience and reduce her risk for chronic diseases that happen with age. So it's something that we can't miss out on. Okay. So menopause, what does it mean? It's defined, or the definition that most people are aware of, is that it's this date, this magical date, 12 months after you stop having your final menstrual period, right? And this is what we typically hear about, like I went through menopause at 51 or 52. We hear about the date, it's sort of like this graduation date, and that's it. But in reality, it doesn't really happen like that. The menopause experience is more like a longer transition. Okay. So we know from studies looking at women over 15 years, 1,500 women, that women actually go through a predictable series of events, regardless of whether or not they have symptoms. Okay. Yeah. So we used to think that it was sort of random how women felt. But when we mapped women's experience out over 15 years and looked at their symptoms and what was happening with ovarian physiology, there's actually predictable patterns, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. So we know that the menopause transition can be broken down into 4 parts. There's the late reproductive phase, the early menopausal transition, the late menopausal transition, and then after the final menstrual period, there's postmenopause. And they all sort of have their unique facets about them.
Okay.
In the late reproductive phase, usually in a woman's like late 40s, sometimes even earlier than that, she may actually not even know that she's in the menopausal transition yet, because what happens is her ovarian pool of follicles starts to decline before we see changes in her cycle. So she actually may have no idea that she's in this phase. She may not even be ovulating all the time as she would earlier in her reproductive life, but for the most part, we don't see symptoms in this phase that we associate with low estrogen states, like hot flashes, vaginal dryness, that sort of thing. Okay, so it's important to track your cycle in this phase, because what will happen over time is as you move into the early menopause transition, your cycles will start to vary by 7 or more days. And that's how you know you're sort of starting to move into this transition period. This is a really interesting period, and it's sort of when things can get a little bit dicey.
Yeah. Okay.
And women really start to feel some of the mental emotional symptoms.
Yeah.
Okay. So what typically happens is that our cycles get shorter first, and then over time they'll get longer and more spaced out. But it's interesting, when we're in our reproductive phase, if we talk about like a textbook cycle, generally 4 weeks in length, we ovulate somewhere around the middle, around day 14, right?
Yes.
Out of 30 days. As we get closer and into this early menopausal phase, what happens is a hormone called FSH rises, because our body is working hard to try and get us to ovulate, because there's less of an opportunity. There's fewer follicles available. Probably many of the follicles that were more ready to go have been ovulated, so our body has to sort of up the ante and start sending a stronger message. But what happens with elevated FSH levels is that the first half of our cycle becomes shorter. Okay. We may actually, because FSH is really elevated, we might actually have more than one ovulation in a single cycle, which can make things really interesting, especially if you're someone who experiences PMS. Right? Because when this starts to happen, you're actually spending relatively more time in the second half of your cycle, which is when PMS symptoms start to happen.
Okay.
Right? So women can start to feel these really large hormonal fluctuations, and they feel like they're on a hormonal roller coaster, and to some extent they are, right? And it's much less predictable than it was in their reproductive phase if they had regular cycles, right? They might have been on a bit of a hormonal roller coaster, especially if there's someone who experiences PMS, but at least it was predictable, right?
Yes.
You might know that in the 4 or 5 days prior to your period, you have PMS symptoms, whereas in the menopause transition,
Don't know when it's going to hit
you don't know what's going on. And the other fun part of this is that you don't ovulate every cycle, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't ovulate, you can't have PMS symptoms, but you can have menopausal symptoms.
Oh, wow.
So you might experience a cycle where you ovulate twice, so you have much more time where you're in the PMS window, and then you might have a cycle where you don't have a period for, you know, a number of days, 30 or 40 days, and you have an anovulatory cycle, and so you have night sweats and hot flashes.
Oh,
so
okay.
it can be super confusing for women.
Definitely.
Yeah, and for their providers. And if you're someone who doesn't track your cycle, it is really confusing to know what's going on. So if you're in this part of life, track your cycle.
Okay, that's a really good piece of advice. Very good piece of advice, I think.
Yeah.
What would you say some of the most bothersome, what is the most bothersome thing that can happen when it comes to the menopause transition? I mean, that sounds like it's very bothersome in itself.
Yes. Well, so that's the early part of the transition. In the late part of the transition, that's when we really see those bothersome symptoms ramp up. Okay. Not in everybody. Everyone's experience is different. Yeah. But we typically see more hot flashes, insomnia, mood changes, and genitourinary symptoms in the late part of the transition. Okay, that's when periods are spaced between 60 and 364 days apart. Okay. All right. Before you go into menopause.
Okay. What should women expect in terms of hot flashes?
Okay.
I mean, that's what we're talking about, and I know they'll want to know. So what could they expect in terms of that if they're not experiencing them already?
Okay, so let's talk about what hot flashes are first.
Awesome.
They are this overwhelming feeling of heat that can kind of envelop your head. Usually it's fairly limited to the upper body. You can have flushing of the skin. Many women become very sweaty on their face, their chest, their neck, their arms. Sometimes it's accompanied with anxiety, palpitations, irritability. obviously, right?
Yes, yeah.
They usually last for between 2 to 4 minutes. Can feel like 2 to 4 hours. But that's sort of what a hot flash is. And your body actually does get warmer. The purpose of a hot flash is to cool your body down.
Isn't that something, how the body is doing that and at the same time?
It is. We don't actually know why it happens per se. We have some really educated guesses, but we think that as women go through the menopause transition, their body's window or their thermoregulatory comfort zone becomes more narrow, which means that your body isn't as comfortable in as wide variety of climates as it used to be. And it becomes more sensitive to small changes in temperature.
Okay.
So for example, when you are walking up 2 or 3 stairs, right, your body detects a small increase in temperature, and it overreacts, like you might as well have run a 5K.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So sometimes it can have such a large overreaction that women actually get the chills, but it brings their body temperature down.
You know, everybody's different. So when it comes to hot flashes, is everyone affected by them in the same way, or are the journeys different for women?
Right. So everyone's journey is unique, or their experience of their journey is unique to them. Okay. But again, with these long-term studies, we've looked at how women transition through the menopause transition in terms of their hot flash journeys, and they tend to go through one of 4 sort of trajectories. So the first trajectory is the one that most women will want to be in, where you have a low probability of flashing through the entire menopause transition. There might be a small uptick around the final menstrual period, but in general, your experience is very mild.
Yes, okay.
These are not the women that are likely to seek help for hot flashes. Okay.
Understandable.
And then, yes, and the opposite of this is the second category, which are women that have a high probability of flashing throughout the entire menopause transition.
Wow.
And not only do they flash frequently, it's really intense. So this really impacts quality of life in these women. And interestingly, the blood work on these women looks different. So they have a much higher FSH level than women in the other categories and lower estrogen. And these are the women that are at increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Okay. So every woman's risk for cardiovascular disease increases in the menopause transition, but if you are a super flasher, where you flash like crazy for many, many years, maybe starting 10 years before your final menstrual period, you need to know that you are at an increased risk of cardiovascular disease.
Okay. And there's, I mean, that's a whole topic probably for a different day, but for people listening, if that was them, there's things they can do about that for their health. And I just have to say a funny thought about the fact that when you say super flasher and flasher, I've got all these images of
I have also thought the same.
Yeah, I bet. So, because, and sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. Is there anything there? Yes. That was 2 of the 4.
So the other 2 categories are people who start early, they stop around the final menstrual period, but it's not intensive. And then the last category is people who actually start after their final menstrual period. And then they might flash for 10 up to 14 years after.
Wow.
So the interesting thing is that knowing these trajectories really challenges this sort of assumption that hot flashes happen for maybe a few years around the final menstrual period. In many women, like probably over half of women that go through menopause, they're hot flashing for like 10 or more years.
Oh boy.
Which is significant.
Yeah, that really is. So what are there any medical treatments? Are there any medications? Is there anything that women can look at when it comes to hot flashes?
Yes, yeah. So the gold standard for treating hot flashes is hormone therapy. Okay. There really is nothing that is more effective than hormone therapy for vasomotor hot flashes.
Okay.
Including conventional medicines or alternative medicines. When we're talking about hormone therapy, we're talking about systemic estrogen, and if the woman still has a uterus, some type of progestogen. Okay. We need to give them both because if we give estrogen alone or unopposed estrogen, it causes proliferation of the lining of the inside of the uterus, and it can turn into endometrial cancer. Okay. So you really do need to take both of them if you're using systemic estrogen. Okay. The thing about hormone therapy is that we can't give it to everyone. There's sort of this window of time where women are hormone sensitive and when it's safe to use it.
Interesting.
So generally, we're looking at women who are less than 60 years of age or who are less than 10 years from their final menstrual period.
10 years from having had their final.
Yes.
I'm getting that right. Okay.
Yeah. So that graduation date, they need to be within 10 years of the graduation date.
Wow.
Okay.
All right.
If we look at starting treatment after a woman is 60 or after 10 years after their graduation date, the risk-benefit ratio changes and there's an increase in cardiovascular risk and dementia.
Is there?
There is.
Wow.
Yes.
All right.
So we really are kind of limited to this window of time.
Yeah.
In this window of time, it is helpful for all-cause mortality, which is interesting. So it's protective.
That's protective.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It is very effective for reducing hot flashes. Studies show like 75% reduction in frequency. Some studies show 85% reduction. So it is good. Yeah.
Okay, we could probably do a whole episode on hormone replacement therapy because I know I've got many questions about that. What about the woman that doesn't want to do hormone replacement therapy but is struggling with hot flashes?
Absolutely. It's not for everyone. If you have a contraindication or if you're outside of that window of time, you do need other options, right?
Yeah.
One thing that I wanted to say is if the viewers are interested in hormone therapy, the North American Menopause Society has a great pamphlet for patients.
Okay, great.
Okay, it's called Deciding on Hormone Therapy, Use for Patients.
Okay.
It's an easy Google, and it has a great write-up on the risks, benefits, and it's something that you could take with you to a healthcare provider and start a good discussion.
Do you know what's interesting is I have it's a small Facebook group for this show so far. I'd like to build it up, but I'm pretty sure it was that very article that I posted a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, it came out in May of this year.
Yeah.
And they have really excellent guidelines for treating women with hormone therapy.
That is wonderful.
It's sort of the gold standard and well recognized.
That is great to know. What do we know about, as a health coach, this is an area that's passionate for me, about diet and hot flashes? Is there any...
Can we go back, Carolyn? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It doesn't matter. Really.
I don't want to miss out on these
the
things.
more the better. So
let me just see where the time is.
Yeah, how are we doing for time? Am I up?
No, I don't think so yet.
Yeah. Say what you need to say and just sort of wrap it up.
For a commercial, and then
we'll get into
the other one.
How long do I have till a commercial?
I'd say 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay.
So
ask again about if you don't want to do hormone therapy.
Okay. All right.
What treatments are available?
Okay.
I'm covered in hair.
So for the women, there's going to be women out there that for whatever reason they don't want to do hormone therapy. Are there any options for them out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Not as effective, but as we talked about, there is really this window of time where we can use hormone therapy to treat hot flashes.
Okay.
So it's important to know that when we're talking about supplements or natural health products for hot flashes, we just don't have the robust foundation or database of evidence-based treatments that we do for hormone therapy. Okay. A lot of women, I'm sure you've heard about talking to women like black cohosh, red clover, fish oil for treating hot flashes.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that we don't actually have a lot of good data to suggest their use.
Okay.
Some studies might show benefit, some may not, or the benefit is not actually as pronounced as we believed it was originally.
Okay.
There is some data on sage.
Oh.
Like the plant sage.
Yeah.
Okay. using it in capsule form. Some people will also drink it as a tea, but the studies are all done on sage extract in capsule form.
All right.
A recent study in 2021 gave women sage capsules over 4 weeks, and they had a 55% reduction in hot flashes.
Wow. All right.
Starting at week 3. So it actually has a quicker onset than even hormone therapy does.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. The nice thing about sage was that it also impacted other target treatments for menopause.
Okay.
So it also helped with insomnia and overall quality of life. So there are options.
Wow.
The other thing is that we know that menopause symptoms are all kind of intertwined, and they often unfortunately make each other worse.
That's right.
Right? So if you're someone who is up 6 times at night because you're having hot flashes where you're soaking the bed and you need to change, right? Where your sleep is disturbed, you're not having good quality sleep, and then during the day you're probably more fatigued, and you might be at more risk for anxiety and depression because you just generally don't feel well.
Yeah.
Right? So we can also borrow some of the research that we have for things like insomnia, and sometimes a nice side effect is that it also might improve hot flashes. So for example, melatonin, which is very commonly used, a study gave a very moderate dose to women before bed. They noticed a significant improvement in insomnia and also a significant reduction in hot flashes.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so it's nice when you can use one treatment to kind of address multiple concerns.
Yeah.
And that's part of the beauty of integrative medicine.
Okay. That's fantastic. Well, this is all wonderful information. We're just going to stop for a few minutes for a commercial.
Okay.
So lots of great stuff here with Dr. Sarah Tremaine Douglas, and we will be back in a few minutes with more.
Monday, October 24th is Municipal Election Day in Ontario, an important election to set the post-pandemic course for our community. Turn to Rogers TV for the local results, your comprehensive coverage as the votes are counted. Tune in to find out who's heading to Municipal Council. On election night, Rogers TV leads with local.
It was my daughter's birthday. She was blowing out the candles on our cake when we heard coming from the TV. So we stopped and listened, and it helped us get to safety. That's why when I think of my daughter's birthday, because now she gets to keep having them.
Watching hockey just got a power play with NHL Center Ice and Super Sports Pack. With up to 37 out-of-market NHL games a week, you'll always catch your favorite team no matter where you live. Whether it's big matchups you're looking for or following your top fantasy picks, it's all here. NHL Center Ice, part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack. All this for only $35.95 a month. Order through your remote on Channel 450 or call 1-888-ROGERS-1 today.
Monday nights, a winner with Optimus TV Bingo on Rogers TV. With a weekly prize board of $3,000, the money raised funds projects to help the youth in our community. You can pick up your cards at over 90 locations across London, and for only $2, you get 6 chances to win. Watch, play, and win every Monday night at 8 p.m. with Optimus TV Bingo on Rogers TV, or streamed live at rogerstv.com.
So welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Sarah Tremaine Douglas today, which she's just giving some amazing information, and I think we could do a whole series with just her. No pressure. But let's talk now about diet, an area that's passionate to me as a health coach. Is there any, can people help themselves through what they eat?
Yeah, absolutely. Diet is so important, right? Diet and exercise, I can't stress that enough, as you know.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about diet and menopause or diet and hot flashes, we really want to start by taking a step back and look at a diet that is not only helpful for hot flashes, but that is good for your heart.
Okay.
Right? Because really one of the most important things as a woman is going through the menopause transition is to start to, I'm off track. What am I saying?
That's okay.
Okay, so we want to eat a diet that's healthy for the heart.
Okay.
So the most well-researched diet for heart health is the Mediterranean diet, right? Based on the traditional diets of people that live along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah.
Before large-scale trade became accessible, they would eat what was local to them. And as I'm sure you're aware, right, olive oil comes out of that region.
Yeah.
Lots of oils, lots of fish, right? Nuts and seeds, red wine in moderation. That sort of thing. So the Mediterranean diet has been shown to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, diabetes. It's very high blood pressure. It's very helpful. Okay, so you should formulate your diet so that it's based on fruits and vegetables, a high intake, lean proteins, so fish at least twice a week. And then chicken, that sort of thing. Red meats less often.
Yes.
Okay, so 3 times a month.
Yes.
And then nuts and seeds, dairy in moderation.
Okay.
And sweets sort of as a treat once in a while.
Okay.
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 And then we can start to bring in some things that we think might be influencing hot flashes. Probably the most controversial, but also something that women should think about is soy.
Yes, okay. All right.
So I get asked about soy a lot because there is still this kind of leftover lingering fear that soy is bad for people with, that have had breast cancer or causes breast cancer. Or, right? We have that long-standing fear, which isn't true.
It isn't true. Okay.
No, there have been long-term studies of like 6,500 people.
Wow.
And there are like the safety data are really good.
Okay.
For soy.
Great
Okay,
to
so
know.
it's not something you need to worry about. But soy is really interesting because it contains these plant isoflavones called genistein and diadzine. A lot of people refer to them as like plant hormones or plant estrogens, and this isn't really true. It's also not how they work in the body, and we don't make our hormones from what we absorb from this food. However, they do weakly interact with the estrogen receptor, so they can have some effect. The data are all over the place with regards to soy. Okay, so there's a lot of controversy if you look online about whether soy is good for hot flashes or whether it has no effect. And an interesting study that came out in 2017 kind of shed lights on why this might be the case and why soy will help one woman and not help the next.
Yeah.
And what they discovered was that diadzine, one of these soy isoflavones, is converted in the gut to something called equal. Now, not everybody has the ability to do this because it's dependent on a specific strain of bacteria that some people have and other people don't, which is really interesting. And whether or not people have this strain of bacteria varies based on where you live in the world, your ethnicity, and also to some extent what you eat. So we know that like vegans and vegetarians are more likely to be equal producers.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're an equal producer, using soy as a functional food to reduce hot flashes is a good idea.
All right.
Because it will probably help.
Okay.
If you're not an equal producer, which
won't.
Unfortunately right now we have no way of knowing.
Yeah.
It may not help with hot flashes, but soy is a great source of protein, right? Which is really important for maintaining muscle mass in menopause, which is important for maintaining bone health.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
We also know that it has favorable effects on cholesterol profile.
Okay.
So it's something that if you include it in your diet, it's beneficial, and it might help 50%
Have the bonus
of women.
of helping with
Yes,
hot flashes.
Exactly.
Okay.
So include it a few times a week if you're going to do it, and most of the studies suggest like upwards of 14 weeks. So make it part of your regular routine.
Okay.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And then in terms of what we should maybe leave out or reduce in our diet, we know that alcohol has a relationship with hot flashes.
Yes.
Okay. So women in that super flasher group tend to have a higher intake of alcohol. okay, and poor health status in general. And we know that women who are heavier drinkers have worse hot flashes. So reducing your intake. Remember that anything over 7 drinks a week is considered
dangerous.
Moderate to heavy drinking.
Yes.
Okay. And then caffeine, there is some research suggesting that women who intake more caffeine have worse hot flashes.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean that you can't have coffee. I'm not taking everyone's coffee away. But if you're someone who has really bothersome hot flashes, consider reducing your caffeine intake and just see if it makes a difference in your hot flashes.
Okay.
It's a very doable, reasonable approach.
And when you're doing something like that, you're not probably doing it for a week. You're probably give yourself a month, I would assume, to give yourself a chance to really see.
Don't do anything for 2 days and see if it works, because it won't, right? Every time.
All right, wonderful. Yes, I felt this collective sigh from women when you were saying coffee and alcohol. And
I know.
But these are all, no, it's all very...
Yeah, the point is to reduce your intake if you're someone who has a high intake.
Yeah.
And it might help.
Yeah. Well, so then let's go from that. Then the natural progression would be to lifestyle. Is there anything that women can do in their lifestyle that would help them if they are flashers?
Yeah, so there's some interesting research in terms of mind-body medicine and hot flashes. We know that self-compassion is really important. There is a growing body of research on that. And cognitive behavioral therapy can be very effective for reducing hot flashes. This has been studied out of McMaster, actually, in Hamilton. And they did a study recently showing a really significant reduction in hot flashes when women did group therapy using a cognitive behavioral workbook that's available to the public. You can buy it online. And they had sessions over 12 weeks, and they experienced a 75% reduction in hot flashes.
That is significant. That's fantastic. Well, so much of, I was going to say so much is our mind. I don't mean to belittle things and say, oh, it's just how we think. But our brain is so powerful.
Absolutely.
And how we treat it and how we think can really make a difference.
And we have data showing that, right?
Yeah.
If you look at 2 women who objectively their hot flash experience isn't really different in terms of frequency and severity. One woman who has more self-compassion or who is able to sort of think of things in a healthier framework, she'll find them much less bothersome than the other women. And we see this around the world also. There are cultures where women experience very few menopausal symptoms. And these cultures tend to not view menopause as this expired date.
That's right.
They don't, in this part of the world, sometimes it's seen as, I hate to use the word even, an ovarian failure, right? Or this, you're not useful anymore.
That's right.
Because
women
you're transitioning
feel invisible
out of
as a result.
Exactly. But it's not a failure.
No.
It's not this state of hormone deficiency, right? You are not any less of a woman or a human because your estrogen levels decline. It is it is an adaptive response. It actually is an evolutionary adaptation. Have you heard of the grandmother hypothesis?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's pretty cool. I was an evolutionary biologist before I was an ND.
Wow. Okay.
So let me tell you a little bit about this. So the grandmother hypothesis is that we actually think menopause evolved in humans, and we have this long period of a woman's life where she is no longer fertile because it was actually advantageous for continuing our species. Because when a grandmother's involved, the likelihood of her having more surviving offspring and grandchildren was higher.
When there's a grandmother involved in her grandchildren's lives,
exactly. Yes.
Really?
Yeah. So her reproductive fitness or her passing on her genetic material was actually higher if she stopped having babies herself and put her energy into looking after her grandchildren.
Oh, that is incredible.
Which is really cool, right? Because if you think about it, as women get older, there is a higher risk with being pregnant.
Yeah.
Right? It's a dangerous thing for a woman in her late 40s to be pregnant.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so, that really is interesting. And I really hope women take that to heart, because there are, the crone stage of life, which is so revered in some cultures.
It is.
We've spoken about this, so I think probably every episode with every guest, where that some cultures just totally revere, respect, put them up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And then you've got our culture where we just feel terribly invisible and, oh, she's just in menopause.
And it's awful because women, especially at this age, have so much knowledge.
To offer.
They have so much wisdom, right? So much talent.
It's true.
So we really need to do a better job of supporting and recognizing women at this stage of life.
Okay. What do you feel about, I'm just throwing this question in, so it might work or might not, but what do you feel, for me, going through this stage, and I've had a few things happen, which I know I'm postmenopausal. I'm pretty sure they're related to it, but at the same time, I can't say I've struggled like some women do. But I have found breath work to be absolutely incredible. And I know that once I started really focusing on breath work, any hot flashes that I was having disappeared. Breath work and meditation.
Interesting. Yeah, it could have to do with stress levels, right? And certainly looking after and taking care of yourself.
Yeah, which goes back to the self-compassion, I guess, does. Really.
Yeah, totally. Maybe you're able to be more aware and self-compassionate.
Yeah.
We actually don't have a lot of data, interestingly, on things like, I'm having a moment of a brain fart.
That's okay. Glad you have them too. On breath work and meditation and hot flashes and stuff like that. Is that where you were?
Yeah, I was going to say, we don't have a lot of data. Like, a lot of women will be told, like, just stress less, right?
Yeah.
Go on a vacation. We don't have a lot of data to support that working. Or they're told, like, take a fan around with you.
Yeah.
Dress in layers.
Okay.
Like, it's drink cold drinks. We don't have a lot of data to support what women are often told in terms of lifestyle.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Another thing that can be very helpful, and it's not something that I use in practice, but we have some fairly good data, is hypnotherapy.
Okay.
And it's something that could be accessible for women. In some of the studies, they actually give women recordings to listen to at home.
Okay.
Where they visualize being safe and cool. And they've seen very significant reductions in hot flashes in women who have used hypnotherapy. And the really cool thing is that it's the first time that a mind-body intervention has been shown to actually change physiologic hot flashes.
Wow.
So they measure the frequency of hot flashes on a woman's skin. Okay. So it's a really good objective measurement of how often they're happening.
That is so, oh my gosh, very interesting. What would you say your takeaway is, or your takeaways are, from what we've chatted about today when it comes to hot flashes and women listening in and watching?
We've talked about a lot.
We really have. It's been great.
But if I could leave women with anything, I would say that it's really important to treat hot flashes if they're impacting the quality of your life. However, we cannot simply treat the symptoms of menopause and forget the profound changes that are happening in a woman's body at that time.
Okay.
We talked about earlier how there is a link between worsening hot flashes and a worse menopause experience and cardiovascular disease. Heart disease is the #1 cause of death for women in Canada, and most women wouldn't acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't talk about it. We think of heart disease as something that happens to men, right? All of the commercials show a man having the very typical symptoms of chest pressure and pain that goes into your neck and down your arms. And women don't often or always experience it like that.
That's right.
It can be indigestion, or some women think that they have reflux, or it can be fatigue.
Yeah.
So we really need to acknowledge that heart disease is your biggest threat as a woman, and your risk really increases through the menopause transition, and you need to be aware of that.
I really hope a lot of women watching take that particular message to heart.
Yes.
Because I know that, I think for women that are going through this transition, you've got some women that power through and still eat well and have those positive lifestyle activities that they do. And then I think you've got some that it's just so challenging and hard. It is easy who wants to work out when you're really, really tired? You've not slept at night.
Absolutely.
And it's so easy, I'll do it tomorrow, but you know what? I didn't sleep well last night, so I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And it can just
snowball.
It really can. And at the end of the day, I mean, we talk an awful lot about breast cancer, which is so needed. I'm not in any way saying it isn't, but a lot of women are frightened of, if that's the wrong word, are concerned, aware of breast cancer.
Yes.
But the message isn't out there enough about
not at all.
Cardiovascular,
No.
because it really is about taking care of ourselves through this transition period or through the menopause journey.
Yeah. So the take home is, when you go to talk to your provider about your hot flashes, yes, they need to give you options to treat your hot flashes, but you also need to be screened for risk factors for cardiovascular disease.
Okay.
So in Canada, what you would be offered around the age of 50 is a cholesterol profile. Okay. So have that done. And if you are over the age of 50 and haven't had it done, make sure you ask your provider. Okay. And have your provider put your numbers into a risk estimator, like the Framingham risk or Reynolds risk score, which can predict your risk of a heart attack or stroke in the next 10 years. Wow. And then ask them, what if I exercise? How does that modify my risk? What if I eat a Mediterranean diet? How does that modify my risk? Or what if I take a statin, for example? Because it is super empowering to see how much diet and exercise modifies your risk.
Isn't that, that's amazing.
Yeah. You also need to know blood glucose, so blood sugar levels, because diabetes is certainly a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. And you need to know what your blood pressure is.
Yes.
So if you haven't had your blood pressure taken, have that done. Okay, normal is less than 120/80. Remember your numbers. It's something that you should write down and keep track of.
Okay. That is fantastic, and maybe maybe I'll get that information from you as well in the three factors, because I think that would be really good to even post in the menopause group, because that's so important. So really, you've probably answered the question about what women should do to prepare to talk to their doctor or their practitioner. Really, they go in with those questions about the tests that they'd like done. Yeah, so know what screening's available to you. Okay. And the big thing in terms of menopause symptoms is track your cycles. Okay. There are lots of period apps that are available, or you can use paper and pen. That's also very acceptable, right? But start tracking your cycles. Okay. A diagnosis of perimenopause is clinical, which means that we don't base it on blood work in a woman who's over 45. All right. We just look at their symptoms. And if you don't know how often your cycles are happening, or whether or not you're ovulating, your provider won't know. And we know that women are notoriously not good at looking back on what's happened in the last cycle and being able to relay things to their provider in an accurate manner. So write it down. So write the first day of your period down. And then the first day of your next period. And then if you have symptoms, like if you think you ovulate, for example, write that in. If you have PMS symptoms, write that in. If you have hot flashes, keep track of how often you're having them. Okay. Rate the intensity out of 10. Okay. Okay? Yeah. Because all of that information will really help you to understand what is going on in your body. Yeah. Right? And it will also help your provider understand how to get you the most appropriate treatment, because sometimes we don't get it right. And if we don't have enough information, then how can your doctor help you? Yes. And you know what, to keep it even to make it very simple, if women don't even, they want to track, but maybe they don't want to have an extra book they do it in, I used to just put a letter P
Sure.
The start of every period, it was just letter P in my journal, so I could always look back and see. But now, do you, because I know come people, once this is over, people are going to be reaching out to me going, I would love to talk to Dr. Sarah. Do you take patients for things like this?
Yes, absolutely.
You do.
Yep.
And you're at lovely Compass Rose.
I am. I work out of Kamoka, but I'm also doing a lot of online work, which is, it's been kind of a silver lining of the pandemic, because it's really opened up access to patients.
Wonderful.
So now I work with patients from all over Ontario.
Okay.
You have to be in the province, but you don't have to live in the London area.
Wonderful.
We can work virtually.
Okay, so we will put your contact info and everything up, and you might get loads of women reaching out to you, but this has just been, I mean, is there anything outside of what we've talked about that you feel that we've missed? I think we've probably covered everything. I know that was take that question out.
No, I was actually thinking, have I, do you think I've missed anything?
No,
Is there anything else?
No, I don't.
That we wanted to talk about?
The only thing do we have time for it?
Yeah, if you do it in like 2-3 minutes.
Oh, Cindy's here. Carolyn, Rhonda and I are here at the side of the building. Let me just tell her, okay, period. I will be down in 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay. No, I think I was just going to say about, you've already made the point of things can Skype, you know, you don't sleep at night, you have hot flashes, and then you don't sleep, and then you don't feel great, and then you don't make the greatest choices the next day. But I think, I think you've covered everything. It's just fantastic.
Can I say one more part?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Are you filming?
Yeah.
Oh.
Stop filming.
Okay. What I wanted to say is that when you work with a provider through your menopause transition, you should have an ongoing relationship with them. Okay. So that will happen if you are doing hormone therapy. My stomach growled. Okay.
We didn't hear.
Okay. So you should have an ongoing relationship with them where you and your practitioner discuss the risks and benefits of the treatment that you are on, and you're also reassessed as you go and as risk factors change. Okay. All right. But the key point is that in menopause and in the transition, you need to have enough points of contact with that practitioner. And you need to have the proper screening test done so that if changes happen, we can detect it before hard endpoints happen, right? Like before you get to be 10 years past your menopause transition and it turns out you've had high cholesterol for 10 years, right? We can reduce your risk for cardiovascular disease by managing your risk factors, but we have to know they're happening. Right? Yeah. So you need to be tracked properly.
Great advice. Great advice. Well, thank you. Yes, I feel this could be a whole event in itself talking about this topic. So I'm so grateful that you came out and that you were willing to come out a second time for it. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm really grateful. Say that again. And thank you for watching. And as I say, we'll have all the information for you on where you can reach out to Dr. Sarah if you want to, and also joining our menopause page where there's a lot more information there that we tend to put out after a show. So have a wonderful rest of the day, and thanks for being here. Thank you.
Thanks.
From the moment that I think I was 49, my doctor took me off the pill because I'd been on it forever, straight into menopause. Boom. Hot flashes. Every night, hot flashes. And this is like, I'm going to spontaneously combust. That's what it felt like. And about every 2 to 3 hours, every night.
Now yours were just at night?
Yeah, mostly at night, rarely through the day. Mostly at night. But then I had the pleasure of experiencing night sweats as well, which to me was a bit different. Like a hot flash is like your whole body is on fire. And a night sweat, you wake up, and I would wake up and I'd be drenched from about here to here. And it's like, okay, I need to change the sheets, just soaked. So it wasn't hot, it was just wet.
Oh, joy.
Yeah.
Okay, and how about you, Nicole?
I don't think I've experienced it to that extreme. I've always had a hard time regulating my body temperature. So I've always got like weird, really, really hot.
Your hot stuff.
Yeah, right. But yeah, like I do get where all of a sudden I'm just like covered in like soaked and sweat, or like, you know, like you feel like climbing the walls because you're just like so hot. So I'm sure they're starting in some capacity, but I don't think I've experienced like hours. I'm like, oh God, is that what's to come?
And don't you think, I mean, that's interesting you say that, because the last panel that we discussed was about stress. And that's a big thing to do with hot flashes, is so often women, we might get them and then we're fighting against them, thinking, aren't they terrible? Is this what's to come? And creating stress within ourselves. And, you know, as per our discussion, we're finding that if we could actually just breathe and go with it, and, you know, I always liken it, I've said it before, to a mountain, climbing up a mountain, and if the hot flash comes, you know, we're getting to the top of the mountain, and then we know we're going to be coming down soon. So that's sort of my picture. Have you found that there's anything that has helped you as you've gone through them, as you went through them? Was there anything that helped you?
Estrogen.
Oh, estrogen.
Hormone replacement therapy. After about 4 months of not sleeping, I was pretty unstable emotionally. And so I went back to my doctor, and he said, you know, there's risk benefit, but it sounds like there's a pretty high risk here, because I was pretty messy. And so he put me on hormone replacement therapy, and that helped quite a bit.
Did it help immediately? Like, was it?
Within a couple of weeks, yeah. You know what made him worse, though, is I find if I have a couple of glasses of wine, it's worse. It's worse. I'll have a hot flash.
And do you know what's really interesting? I can't say, I do get hot flashes, but I can't say they're a regular thing. So I will get them. I do notice it's when I am more, if I feel more stressed about something, if I have something going on with health or whatever. And it's very, I think, mindfulness, the whole works, eh? We're starting to really think about what we're thinking, what we're doing. But I must admit, on those nights, last night I had a very small, I've never been a big drinker, I had a very small glass of wine, and it was not a good night. And I've been finding that trend. I think keeping a journal with hot flashes, I think, I don't know if you ever did, and I think if you could, as you get into this, I think keeping a journal is extremely important. Did you ever keep a journal for flashes, that kind of thing?
No,
did you know to?
I didn't. No, it didn't even dawn on me. But it's a great idea, because you can start to see cause and effect.
That's right. So remember, when it comes to hot flashes, when we get concerned about the hot flashes and we try and push them off, they're only going to get worse, most likely. So it's actually about just accepting them and trying to work through them, because we know that when we have hot flashes and we get worked up about them, it can then affect other things like our sleep and our energy. But reeling that in and trying to just lie there and accept them and get through them just might benefit you. And of course, don't forget to sparkle.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Hi, I'm Dan Mailer. I'm the host of London Lights, the show where we talk about notable Londoners who have made a big mark, big impact on the world of music, entertainment, sports, politics. Today our guest is Jonathan Hollow, Yuri Poole of the McCartney years, the one and only Jim Chapman, Peter Brennan of Jeans and Classics fame. London Lights, Thursday at 8:30.
Watching hockey just got a power play with NHL Center Ice and Super Sports Pack. With up to 37 out-of-market